But they don't use that. They use their own system. Did you figure that out?
No, I haven't. I'm wondering what it is.
Yeah.
I'm seeing all the cameras front facing.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. Where was that? I didn't see that.
The lighting.
Yeah, roughly. Give or take. Okay, well, it's 4 o'clock, and their automated secure, system is going to start capturing, so we might as well get started. It's 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. You've all seen now roughly 2 million PowerPoint slides. I don't want to, add to that mountain of PowerPoint. Louise Bayo and I'm Brian Donnelly. This is Louise Bayo. We're from Columbia Law School, and Tony McLeod, who's over here, is from Columbia as well. We work with him. And so we were thinking, maybe by show of hands, of how many folks are actually considering installing this in your school. Okay, good. Because I think maybe the thing to do would be for us to just spend a few minutes, sort of talking about what we did, and then maybe if we could just have a dialogue of what it is that you're considering, and you can bounce ideas off of us about what might make sense in your own environment, right? Because everybody's got a peculiar situation in your school, and rather than us sort of yakking about it, if we could just answer folks' questions and talk about it, great. If it doesn't take the entire period, so be it, right? Just don't tell John Mayer. So just to start, we had this question of scale, right? That we were thinking about, how can we get away with, having recording in, this classroom and not that classroom? It was, becoming a real problem. So we tried to come up with a sort of global plan where we were going to install audio capture in places where we didn't have it, and just do it globally, right? Because you can't anticipate which classroom someone's going to actually make the request in, right? So we ended up just doing it everywhere. But what's different, I think, in some ways about the way we did it was we didn't use the full Echo 360 package, right? We were way too cheap to say we're going to spend $2,000 on a capture appliance, right? And if we're going to go 27 classrooms times roughly $2,000, the project never would have happened, right? So we had to sort of come up with creative ideas on how to do this. What we had been doing was, how many of you folks were using are using something like this now, right? Sort of the manual approach where you get it on the podium, or we had it in our control room where we'd hook it up, right? After a while, after a couple thousand recordings over a few years, that begins to really wear thin, right? And there's really no way that you're going to get the scale, right? 20-something classrooms with these puppies, right? That's just not going to happen. Although, they're good. They solve some of the problem. So our solution, right, was to do, as you see here, get audio capture in those rooms that didn't have it, and then modify the rooms that did. So if we had a room, a classroom that had an AV closet with a lot of tech in it, we wanted to make sure that when the system was shut off, that the audio portion of the system still stayed on, right? So even if the room was off, that we could still have that capture scheduled and it would still go off regardless of what was going on in the classroom. So that was sort of the big challenge in the rooms that actually had stuff in it. And then we came up with a very simple approach to putting in microphones. There's a small mixer. We would put it in a closet, or we would have one of these. We would have one of these boxes in each classroom. And our idea was that the capture process from the client side should take place in an independent computer, right? Often the model you see is that the capture will take place at the podium, right? Because you're trying to grab the VGA output of whatever is at the podium, and then you're going to feed the signals out to the server. But we feel really strongly that having it by itself, this has got its own network jack and its own electricity, so that you feel pretty confident that on any particular moment the computer is actually going to work, right? It's going to be connected to the network, and it's going to have an input, and nobody's messed with it, right? A number of times we've gone into classrooms where people have somehow reconfigured the computer is, hard to say. So, we did this in a number of classrooms. Tony, do you remember who made these boxes?
That's a standard off-the-shelf, Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, these are Mid-Atlantic boxes. We had our AV contractor. They actually go into the wall, right? You cut a little channel into the wall, so these things are set in to some degree, and that's actually worked out really well for us. That each computer for each client is its own own little island in the classroom. We also have a media control room where a lot of our classrooms are tied into. So we have the head end, and so what we did is we took one of 4 wires. Each of our classrooms has 4 lines coming into the head end, and we took one of those lines and dedicated it to the audio from the classroom rack. And so coming out of our Sierra switcher was a line. So basically what you see here is a network wire, RJ45 jack, and then there's also another audio wire that comes in from our switcher. Right, and it's a very simple configuration. It's very direct. It's straight out of the switcher. So we basically have just a farm of these Dell hybrid computers, right? One for each room, but it's all in a centralized location. So it makes to the extent that we can do that, we did. And we also have lines coming in from classrooms on other floors and that kind of thing. And so the putting the box in the classroom is the exception to the rule rather than trying to centralize the whole thing. As I say, that's
standard studio version Dell. It's like a low.
Yeah, it costs about $500, I guess, right? This is what it looks like. And so the idea is rather than spending $2,000 for the actual capture appliance, we went out and got the Dell hybrid, and then put the software on each of these PCs, right? And so it seemed like a good idea at the time. In theory it would work, but in practice it took us a while to actually work through getting everything configured in such a way. Apparently, our idea, which sort of seemed like not the obvious thing to do, was something that really hadn't been done, right? And certainly not on the scale that we had done it. And so we worked through a number of issues, and this is really where Louise Bayo comes in. Louise is a network administrator and can talk about the server end of things, right? Getting the client to work on here really wasn't so much the problem, but it was really sort of on the server end of things that I think was a challenge that we overcame.
Right. So part of it is in looking at the setup, it's only 27 classrooms, and when you look at places like Purdue that have 600 rooms wired for this, it seems small, but the difference in our situation is we're running audio, which helps us. It's not as intensive on both the server, on the client, and on the processors as video would be. But we're running them all day long. And in some cases, part of the impetus for this, by the way, was the H1N1 flu that was coming out in the beginning of the semester. And we really thought, well, what if classes shut down for 2 weeks? We wanted this stuff to work. So we thought, let's record all of them and see how we can stress test it. And it actually turned out well, once we overcame some of the technological hurdles. So in keeping with how we kind of wanted to go about doing this in a low-cost way, we decided to have the server, rather than be a dedicated box, be virtualized using an IBM solution in a Blade Center, and it's worked out quite well. So the server itself handles the web server that distributes the actual media, the SFTP, which controls the back and forth between the capture devices, the capture software stations, and the server, and the streaming. So all of this is done through one virtual, really kind of low-tech VM. As far as our media processors, you need more power on that. That's all based on the processing speed. And so we have 3 machines that do just this. And some of them we actually just use old web servers actually to do this. We have some with dual processors, some with quad core processors, but in either case they get the information out very quickly, especially since we're only doing audio. And we managed to do it in a mixed environment. So we have Windows on one and Linux on two others. And it's worked out quite well. At the heart of all of this, though, is a database. And so for that, rather than, again, going physical, we decided to do, again, another virtualized server. And that's handled pretty well. Now, that's where we ran into problems, because the whole system is based on automation. And so you have a scheduling system that allows you to set up your courses at the beginning. You set up which rooms are going to get recorded, what times, which professors, how are they going to get notified. And that's all database driven. If that database goes down, there goes Echo. But to the extent that we've managed to overcome those things, we did. Early on, one of the things we had, and this would have happened regardless of whether it was an appliance or capture software stations that we were using, was simply having the stations communicate with the server. This was an SSH issue, just literally just a talking back and forth. I hear you, but I can't talk back, that kind of thing. Which patches, that Echo release soon resolved. Finally, what do we do with these with the content? What if the thing does go down? What if the database does fall apart and we need to recover this stuff quickly? Well, we use an IBM Tivoli solution to back it up on a nightly basis. And then we have monthly backups to capture just what it looked like at the beginning of a certain month. And again, because we're only doing audio, this is a reasonable prospect. I think at most we've reached maybe 150 gigabytes for a semester total of audio. And that's, again, including a lot of audio recordings happening in a day. And one of the things we had to overcome, we don't use Google, we don't use Blackboard. We have our own homegrown solution based on Domino. And the system just doesn't work out of the box with that. So we use our email guy was amazing in being able to say, well, let's have it send out an email notification the way it normally would, but then have it actually parse out the subject, which included the name of the professor, the name of the course, the time, the class section, and have that actually pump out to each one of the course pages on our homegrown CMS. And again, that's worked out quite well once we had it rolling. And going back to this whole idea of storage, I think that's going to be a big thing for us, especially once we start considering video. Again, even with audio, you still need a good amount of space. If only because if the system does reach a certain threshold where you have maybe a few gigabytes left, it does start slowing down, there are hiccups, certain things won't process and you're not quite sure why. So space is a premium thing that you need to consider when trying to implement this. Our current SAN does need an increase and we're working on that. But to maximize the space, one of the things that we considered doing was at the end of every semester, simply getting rid of them. There are means of actually archiving the information to, let's say, a low-cost, low-tier solution of storage. But you don't necessarily need this. It's lecture captures. It's going to be useful for that semester. Presumably, professors are going to tweak and alter their lectures from one semester to another. So keeping all of them isn't that necessary, but certainly for certain things like special events. Suppose we have a moot court running and we want to record that, then those things can be kept. And you can still keep your footprint on the file storage system relatively small. So that's it, I guess, for me. So do you guys have questions, concerns about how to implement?
You also have the, not just the, because we just signed with Echo. You also have the raw media files. Do you wait till the end of the semester, or do you do like a quicker deletion time?
That's actually a good question. We were considering, I guess, at some point getting rid of them because they just give you an automated way of after 30 days saying get rid of the raw media. If we were doing video, that would be a big thing to consider. You don't need it unless you really want to go back and edit it again, really sort of jazz it up and then re-release it, maybe put it on a blog or something else. Given that it's audio, we actually don't have that worry.
And that's really sort of one of those threshold questions that we kind of grappled with was, well, would just having audio be sufficient, right? And our experience over a few years of doing this, we've been doing audio capture for, I guess, 2.5, maybe 3 years. And it's rare that a faculty member says that the audio capture isn't sufficient, right? The students haven't complained at all about the fact that they have access to the audio file but not the video content. I mean, I think that what you're able to hear, particularly if, the quality of the sound that you have is pretty good. And that's, another battle, right, is getting, the actual audio captured within the room of sufficient quality that no matter where anybody is, you can hear them. Once you get a good quality audio file onto the web, I think, my impression is that students are good, they're fine with that. They're not saying, oh, gee, I need the video content, right? Yeah,
Just some practical questions from the teacher's point of view.
sure.
Wrap around ear set mic or the lavalier mic, because various models of microphones, if the instructor turns his head, the voice fades. And secondly, you got the competing noise from student microphones and books and laptops and things they bring with them.
Right, well, in those classrooms where we had an audio system already built, where there's a microphone at the podium, and we have several classrooms that have student mics at the seats, they're push to talk for the students, and so there isn't the competition for, the sound. And so it's mostly, the mic for the teacher at the podium.
So the teacher is stationary.
Well, or they'll wear a wireless lav sometimes, if they want to walk around. Kind of depends on the faculty. But that usually picks them up relatively well. And in those classrooms where there wasn't a built-in system, we just have ceiling mics. And I've seen some similar configurations here. And so then no one wears a mic, and it's just picking up the sound in the room. One of the biggest sort of noise inputs, I think, is the actual keyboards on laptops. Right? That can sometimes be distracting, depending if the mic gate's on and somebody's just clicking away the whole time. But I haven't found that to be a particularly big problem. I mean, occasionally you hear the clicking in the background, but usually what's going on is in the forefront.
One final point, is the database searchable by a minute?
No, you can slide. I mean, once you get the audio recording up, there's a slider where you can go across the entire
So a
event.
student who's searching for a particular part of the class.
Yeah, it's kind of hit and miss. Yeah, but the slider actually usually works once again because it's just audio. It's a fairly fast motion between segments in the recording. Video sometimes it takes quite a while for it to sort of refresh and whatnot.
And I mean, that said, I think it also depends, again, on the type of recording you're doing. If it's audio only, then right. I mean, you're just going to have to scan for it. But the way it's traditionally used, it's not really video heavy on sort of the professor as much as it is on screen capture. And at that point, Echo does do a bit of indexing, so that you can, based on the next slide.
Where the slide is, yeah.
Right, it'll pick up on that, and so that allows students to actually go to a specific point in the lecture.
I may have missed this, but in those rooms that had a computer in the podium, you decided not to go with those?
Correct. Yeah, and for a number of reasons. If we do want to add the VGA component to it, within our racks, we can take a VGA out and put it into the Echo 360 client machine. So it doesn't have to physically be in the podium. And the idea that the rack is in a closet, it's locked away, and the PC is with it, that we just don't have to worry about the PC not being available when it needs to be available. That's a big piece of it for us.
Right, because you have to consider things like, professors logging out and restarting the machine, and maybe the process doesn't start up upon restart. So those kind of considerations, we have to separate the two.
Yeah, I mean, we felt that running Echo 360 simultaneously with any other applications that faculty is going to be using at a podium, it was kind of a scary proposition, quite frankly. So we'd rather just have the computer, a very dedicated box.
So your Dell machines, they're running just Windows?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have 3 Echo capture appliances and I'm getting quotes on like 10 others.
Right.
Yeah,
they're just Windows boxes.
doing hybrids with the capture software.
Yeah, no, it definitely works quite well. I mean, the only thing to consider when setting up a PC to do this as opposed to an appliance is you have to get the sound right. And of course, every machine is going to have a different sound card. You're going to have to adjust gain, or any number of things on the audio end, which with an appliance you don't really have to consider. So that's really it. But once the software is installed, it goes.
You reboot. Do you have those things power managed where they reboot?
They reboot. We have them do automatic updates when it's convenient, not during the day, of course. And every now and then when we do a major upgrade to the server, we do manually reboot them just to make sure they're in good condition. So again, that's another thing to consider is the management of these devices.
Yeah, I mean, I worked very closely with the contractor when we were running the computers, and there was an issue with the sound cards, and if you're planning on going the homegrown route, you really should, in retrospect, specify the sound card that the device comes with, as opposed to just pulling it off the shelf like we did. Whereas we had just upper and lower limit threshold issues, and there were some things that we just had trial and error with recording. Listen to it now, I do this, and I do that. And in our rack and in our MCR system, there's a lot of compression and sound management before it gets into there, so we had to figure out where we're going to tap it to go into.
And important to note is the fact that if you want to do video or screen capture, you're going to need an appliance, right? I mean, this works for us because it is only audio. But if you do plan to get more advanced in the setup, an appliance is really the only way to go.
Did you import your schedule in?
I'm sorry?
Did you import the schedule in?
Yeah, we didn't. We kind of knew who would most likely ask, and so we kind of pre-populated the actual internal schedule there. And then, so as the first class came in, we would schedule it, and then depending on whether it was every class or if they gave us a series of classes, we would put it in. Something to consider, though. I mean, it's probably a good way to approach it is just to put the entire schedule in there, because it makes it quite a bit easier, to begin with, to schedule a recording or a series of recordings.
That's what we plan to do with
Right.
our banner. The only issue, it's not a minor issue, we're publishing to iTunes, so we actually have to manually put in the handle, the
That's right.
iTunes class. So we're going to have to do, actually, we had a simpler, like we did a simpler way, than it could have been a lot more complicated.
Right. And I mean, speaking about iTunes, one of the nice things about, I guess, iTunes as it was released maybe about a year ago, is you can import RSS feeds, and this thing automatically generates those.
Yes.
So it makes it a lot easier to do that kind of thing. I mean, it's not automated, but you can have some control that way. And speaking to the scheduling piece, it was hard for us at first because, again, our scheduler is homegrown. So how do the two databases really talk to one another? They did release in the second to last version a REST-based API, which does allow you to then have your, assuming the database is compatible and it's Oracle, it's it's a good chunk of the database market. You can have them talk to one another.
Yeah, they have also that import tool on the scene.
That's right, but a little bit of elbow grease required for that.
Yeah, I was looking at it.
Well, how many people use Blackboard as us? Well, that's it, okay. Because our understanding is it actually works quite well with Blackboard,
Yeah.
right? You've done that, right, Garrett?
Actually, what the funny thing is that we've actually used Blackboard to publish. We have an iTunes link to our, actually in Blackboard, our course called Law School. That's where we put our podcast and we go to iTunes.
Right.
So actually, we're going to just bypass Blackboard directly.
Oh, really? Okay.
They'll still have to access it. The students will still have to access it through Blackboard.
Right.
Because we lock it down, but they'll actually go directly to iTunes.
Really? So the recording goes from Echo 360 to iTunes?
Yeah, you got the handle all worked out and everything. We tested it out.
Neat.
And it also goes to Twin,
Yeah.
which if you're a list subscriber.
Yeah, there you go.
As well.
Okay, yeah.
So we don't use Blackboard, we use Twin.
Fine, right. And that's all worked out, yeah. Yeah, that was a real challenge for us, trying to get, the recording populated in our course webs. That was, a trick, but we did it. And it works fine, it's funny, very simple. Other questions? I know, if you're trying to do this, you probably have a few thoughts about how you might implement it in your own place.
Do you have any idea how many students are actually going back and listening to the class?
Yeah, there is a statistical analysis that you can do, and we have a number of classes. There's a tax class, that class is recorded, and that's up in the thousands of listening tos, and then it goes down from there. And I think there may be some fraction of classes that even though the faculty wanted it recorded or students wanted it recorded, that it's not a particularly popular thing to listen to. If it's a seminar or something, most people were there. That reminds me that one of the issues that you all must have to grapple with is, what's the criteria for getting a class recorded? In our school, we ask the faculty to contact us. And you often get students, if their student's going to be out sick, or there's some other reason they're out, traveling on moot court or something like that, a job interview, that they'll ask for the class to be recorded. But, if one records a class just sort of on the, the request of any particular student at any particular moment, right, that's a problem, right? How about you, Gary? How does that happen?
We do a procedure. They have to contact student affairs and contact the professor.
That's where sick, being
Or sick, or somebody, let's say, like, we have a job, there's a job fair, there could be a job fair in Friday during class.
Right.
So we go through that. The turnaround time is pretty quick, and then they contact, my department. We'll see how it works out as far as doing it with that kind. But I think it'll be okay. So what we would probably do is an ad hoc. It's not a regular scheduled class. You can do the ad hocs under the ECHOS thing.
Right, yeah. We would just schedule a particular, if they're in there, if the faculty's in there and in the room and all that kind of stuff, you can just schedule a recording. You have to have at least 5 minutes time roughly for the entire system to, be ready to make the recording, but that's, not so bad. Yeah.
Is the echo system searchable by the professor so the professor can review that a certain 10-minute segment of a particular class was heavily accessed by students, indicating that it was a particularly difficult?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It tells you, the recording as a whole, has been listened to so many times. And if the students only listen to 10 minutes, I think that's it, right? It's a hit, and therefore it's counted. But that, it's an interesting.
I think you can also email the instructors, like when the course is done, that it's been podcasted.
Give the stats.
Yeah.
But you don't get sort of minute by minute analysis of what part was particularly engaging for certain students or popular. But one of the things sort of writing off that we did see is sort of when do these recordings get listened to the most? And you always find that it's near midterms and finals that you really get the heaviest amount of viewership, which makes sense. And those are the kind of statistics that you can gain immediately from it, but not the minute by minute that I know of.
With ESS, are y'all running the onboard Wowza, or you have a media server?
We're running the onboard Wowza. And again, the Wowza for us would make more sense once we do video, because that's really for the rich media streaming.
Well, that's true. If you're doing audio only, it's on that.
That's absolutely right.
That's true.
Yeah. But everything as much as we could put in-house in the VM, we do.
The other thing that actually I think is a really good feature of this product is that the logs that you can find for each of the client computers actually do tell you a lot of information, right? That whenever we're trying to diagnose a problem, particularly to begin with, when we would have this SHH problem where the file would get recorded locally, but our server wouldn't take it and let it be processed up at the server. You get a pretty good idea of each process that's happening, and if there is a problem, we'd send the log down to Echo 360, and they take a look at it, and so that you feel pretty comfortable that even if something's going wrong, you can probably diagnose what the problem is and resolve it.
And not only that, you can set up for each of the capture workstations with the software, because you register the workstations with a static IP address. You can actually set up alerts to email you if it's been down without power for several minutes and stuff like that. If one of the inputs is missing, they'll actually email you. I get the emails.
And what's nice too is whether it's a capture appliance or a capture software station, each of those machines do have their own interface that you could log into and see. You can monitor the recording while it's happening. You can pause, extend it for 5 minutes if the class goes on, and then check out those log files. And one of the things that they've done over time is really improve sort of the readability. So it plays out almost like a play-by-play. The yellow ones, you got to worry about. The red, maybe something, this is what probably caused the recording not to go through or not to sound as good as you would expect. So a lot of tools built in.
I was going to say, we've been running Echo 360 for probably the better part of a year and a half now. And one of the things that we found was with the encoding station, we're running the video, audio, screen capture, all that. With the encoding station, you have to make sure you have a great deal of horsepower, especially processing.
Video, that's right.
Yeah, because the video encoding process takes a lot of CPU cycle.
Absolutely.
To the point when I like the way that they did it because it's modular, so you can, if you need to have additional encoding stations, and you start to see a threshold in that, you can add encoding stations and add it to the ESS server, and your capturing station will be able to decipher which encoding station is the least busy, and push the files off.
Did you find that if there was a problem in encoding a particular file, that would have an impact on other processes, or that would sort of just be a unique thing?
Good question. We haven't hit that threshold yet. I think it's probably more contingent on length of recording.
Right.
Yeah, but we haven't hit that threshold just yet. This upcoming year, we're going to be doubling up the number of recordings that we're doing, so.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna start-
Yeah, no, that would be interesting to see, right? Because, I mean, it's a beautiful thing that when, let's say, we'd have, I think, maybe 8 recordings going on simultaneously, right, in different classrooms, and then when, the class is over, these files then are then brought up to the server and encoded, and you can monitor that process, right? It says it's encoding, and, and I always wonder, if at some point one of these things just starts to hang, is the entire thing going to go down? And that really hasn't been our experience, right?
Well, no, I think early on, right, when we were having these SSH issues, one of the things we encountered was one processor just didn't take it, or was hanging on it. And what you can do is sort of say, all right, stop working with that one. And immediately it'll sort of try to recrunch it and say, all right, that one's available, let's try that one instead. So as far as, being able to intelligently pick and choose which makes more sense for the recording, it'll do that to some extent. Again, now if you're having overall problems with the network, it's not much you can do. And if SSH is just down on the server, it's not going to talk to anything anyway. But if something does sort of cut off, it does try to fix itself as best as it can.
Are you guys running 2.5 now?
We're running, 2.5, update 1. I think was the last one we did.
But I suppose it's 2.6.
Oh, yeah. One of the things, the newest update that's going to come up is going to deal with a lot of the database issues. One of the things we were dealing with before is, you're testing. So you're putting up a capture software station here, a processor there, then you're like, I don't want to use that, I want to use something else. Well, the problem is on the list of devices that you're managing, some will just stick, and you can't remove them. So some of these things are going to be addressed in the newest update. We're excited to see 3.0, hopefully, when that sort of comes up and develops. One of the things we're concerned about is video-only capture. And so there's a lot of stuff sort of being thought out and in the works for something like
Video
that.
has been coming for a long time.
Right. But again, from what I saw was at the ECHO conference last week, I mean, the improvements to 2.6 alone for current users should really help us out in terms of cleaning up what was there. They've been really great at addressing some of the issues we've had with schedules that sort of misfire or things. We had one particular issue where a class will come up that we didn't set to record, but kind of appeared out of nowhere and then said it was missed, but we never set it to record in the first place. And these things are going to get cleaned up in the new version, so we're excited to see that.
And then one of the ways that you can configure it is to have the MySQL database either internal to the system or external, right? And you might want to explain that a little bit.
So out of the box, if you don't have a lot of hardware to work with or a lot of space, you can set up everything to run internally. So the web server will be an internal Apache-based server. I think it's Jetty. Jetty is the web-based server, and then there's Derby for the inbuilt database. The problem is these things don't scale. And early on, one of the big problems was once you did your testing, you said, all right, cool, I want to move over to MySQL, or wanted to go out to an external web server. It became very hard to migrate. But as far as testing goes, it's great. It does its job, but you just don't want to sort of push the threshold too much.
Yeah, they say it's like 15 machines.
That's right. When we hit 26, we have
We're
no
under that
choice.
threshold, so we're going to be doing dirty for now.
Right.
Now, that's much cleaner installation from my experience, that if you just take the database that's packaged along with the web server, that's fine, and that you can run into some challenges when you've got an external MySQL database that you're talking to, right? And it kind of complicates matters, but it does allow you to scale it up quite a bit. And in the end, it worked out really well for us.
Oh, absolutely.
And I never really had any worry that, well, gee, if we're doing 8, 10, 12 simultaneous captures, that we were going to end up sort of overloading the system in some way.
Right. And if you have some good database folks, I mean, working with MySQL, I think it's pretty much, everybody has some handle on. If you run with databases and backing them up, restoring from a faulty database, it's fairly straightforward. And we ran into that issue once again early on and experimenting with SQL, and it worked out just fine.
Any other questions, thoughts? Well, I think we can call it a week. right? Yeah, I mean, you all seen the PowerPoint that lasted for a while. So Louise and I are available. Gary, I spoke to out of Hofstra, and it's a lot of experience, so, we're glad to talk to you.
Yeah, Brian's really good, he helped us a lot.
Great. Glad you were here. How you doing?
No,
Thanks.
did they say at the Echo conference, that they got the migration stuff ready from Postgres to Rosine people?
The Postgres stuff they weren't talking, I actually did know that, but it took very long. I've been part of it. What they were talking about was people even having problems with
It sort of made sense because we wanted to do
just some of the other issues.
our business school, also have a contract, and so we were making them, and we felt pretty comfortable because our business school had experience, and so we were thinking, this guy can just go, maybe we're pretty good. I mean, there are others out there. There's one, I can't remember the name right now.
And they said they're.
They come to me. That's actually completely online. Right, and you can just set up your camera and everything, just the overall, web service, and just go out. Integrity, that's integrity. Which is an interesting idea, right? And if I were going to do it again, I would think about it. It's pretty expensive. The fewest you can do is 200 hours. Right.
I got spring break. I started to two.
So how did you go from 2?
But I mean, you have a pretty robust IT staff.
What was
Oh, okay, sure.
I was only getting so when I would try to do those upgrades, it would work because I didn't have any stuff. So now that I'm tech guys on that list, I'm getting the incremental upgrades. Well, at least
and that's probably because again,
I want like spring
But
break.
I mean, the nice thing about
spring break
is that if you want to just move on after
two systems
just move on and haven't
They set
sunk
up
a lot of money into
we're saying
hardware and configuration right away. I think one of the big issues is just getting going in that classroom. That's a big project all by itself. But I mean, most of your classes have something.
I'm not sure if you know that's
So you're kind of on the beta track or something?
no, you know
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, no, they had a, what do you call that? A release candidate where they were hosting maybe 8 or 9 schools.
Well, I mean, one of the things to think about is that the model expects you to have your, capture,
So these folks are
VGA, components. As I say, I think that's a really bad idea. And that to the extent that you can have
this problem that
everything you need,
wild
integrate that,
really 9
people. That's really.
With questions.
One man IT
Because
shop.
I know we're looking at it, I don't know. Never start something like that. And I'm like,
John Mayer was your predecessor's predecessor.
Predecessor, and so we're looking at new things to maybe a good clean slate to work off and see what we do.
Right. Yeah, as I say, I mean, if you can get the cost per page to work out, Well, that's, I mean, you really have to jump off the cliff at some point, right? Because if you're buying 20 clients, if you're at $40,000 in bonds, plus the license fees, plus all the actual, that's a lot of money. And if that's what I went to my team and said, oh, we need $85,000. You go, I don't think so.
So how much did you spend overall for the upload system?
Well, audio capture license is only $10, right? And then, but then you have to have a server, and then your client's PCs. And I said, we spent $500 on this, right? And so we're trying to do this cheap as possible. And then we spent another, I don't know, $25,000 getting the classrooms that didn't have any tech in them. But it only came out to like a few $1,000s per classroom, which is like, well, you can't do it for nothing. But
grab this
card, $4,000.
Yeah.
That's cool. So that's a pretty reasonable number. And then that's a hit only for, year one. And, but it is true. I mean, you're looking at $80,000.
So what do you want to know?
We're still being. That's why, integrity is except getting, to a computer that's on the web and streamed out.
So we're looking at like right now we're looking at predicting to see what they have to offer.
Notice these are all kind of
Well, the thing about Echo is that they are coming out with new sort of models, just like video only capture and that appliance. I mean, the guys in the business will have the original appliance and it look like these sort of homemade box, metal box type thing. But then now they have a really nice slick looking one. But that appliance evolves, right? So that it's like any IT decision. Once you make that decision, buy this thing, right? The next version of the other thing, it just came out, right? And so that's I think a big issue that whatever appliance you buy, you have to live with this for a while. And then the question is, cameras are going to extent can
and spent back to cameras. I mean, it's just a license.
Right, and in some ways you pay a premium, right, to have them worry about it. But on the other hand, you can just call them and say, what's happening with my video, as opposed to, oh my God.
We capture, it depends, like,
The
what type of
database is
camera. It's all,
So you
it's really,
database.
like, everything is, I designed it like modules.
So we were looking
There's
at
different modules that do different things.
Yeah, I mean, you need
The process takes all the there's the
and then the
capture
the web service is in there.
I've written a module that captures video.
But I don't think it has to be a particularly high level.
I've written a module that captures video from
Somebody who can deal with the
hardware,
data.
analog cameras that and pay to capture the hardware. So no, we're using the analog crap.
That worked out fine for us, actually. I mean, it's really simple. Because one of the things you do, as you schedule a class, is say, we'll send an email. Who are you going to send an email to?
If you look at,
So we figured out.
That's all driven off of this
there's literally
Well, I mean, the interface for Echo largely set all that up.
quality
The data
data
lives in it.
So we're going to play with a little bit of tweaking, like maybe it's a driver issue or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, but to get the recording into
then
a
what we've done in specialized rooms is we have different modules to turn.
Very simple.
The way it works is really simple.
Yeah.
Is that
With the
in order to
exactly.
even less, everything, whether it's a type of camera, it's just the back-end module, that whether it's for this camera, that camera, whatever camera, it's just looking through the base.
Yeah. No, I get that.
So then what I've done is, it's how data gets into the database.
No,
So you can
there is no authentication on the level where
in
you're
our
clicking on
database, and you just say, oh, report this
Most
course,
people hide it in
search all
their
your
course
courses.
system so that when you can't get to that.
If you go into
you're authenticated.
clinic interview,
But once you have it,
push
you
the button on the
download
wall, there's a serial module
So what the heck?
that you're in the box,
You're in trouble at
that
that point.
when you push that button, it just inserts directly into the database to say,
Yeah.
start recording.
The kids have an iPod.
If you're in
I don't know what to tell you. It's out there.
I'm just getting prepared with all the
Right.
questions.
Well, you know what we did?
we're listening
went
for
around
a
with
relay,
a piece of
chirp
paper
on the cameras. There's just a
and
module
one
that
faculty
I wrote that does that says, oh, it's
Show
chirp
up the
on the record.
language, right? So, please, be considered your colleagues, please be recorded.
No, it's mostly.
And I just stopped doing that, right?
And
There's no way.
So all it does is, it's just different things, like there's the module that you're grabbing, there's multiple modules.
That's what actually the science is.
there's a module to
You
do
know, if there's some way to,
there's a module to do
just say, okay,
serial
look, class being
detection,
recorded.
a module to do relay detection, a module to do.
But I mean, really, I think students need
It's
to.
there, and so it's like,
Yeah,
instead of writing a whole new thing for different cameras, we just write away, grab from that camera, and we can put that camera in this room, that
You don't
camera.
want to say something, it's like that Twitter thing.
Yeah.
Did you see that? I mean,
Just
it's
assign
unbelievable.
I
that
know, it's like, why would you
camera
jeopardize your career on this? Because everyone,
Right.
ooh, that comes up with a lot of full-time staff.
Right.
Not really that complex. I mean, it's, there's all this hard, the camera hardware and stuff.
Right, and
It all just
for
is on the
those
network.
that
The only thing,
that are
the analog
actually
cameras, there's an
publicly
old
distributed,
Dell box
that
that
we
had
don't
like 9
have them
PCI
at
systems.
we take them out, we edit, we edit, we edit them. Because if there's some sort of, chatter at the beginning and chatter at the end, but you don't want to have that stuff out publicly. Right, so you really do need to sort of, work with that. And it takes time. Then we have the choice.
PCI slots,
You actually have
the
to
whole
listen
top
to it.
cards are doing
Right.
that.
You can't just say, oh, gee, the recording came,
Real
recording
run
that.
horsepower.
Yeah,
coding.
somebody
And
said something.
When it does that, it
Do you
just
do
goes
that?
right to our
We do
NFS, to our server. And once it starts recording, it tells the database, hey, I've done recording that capture. And then it fires off
But they do
the processing
traditional
request, and
video.
once the processing
We have-
request is
most of our
down
events are
to the
recorded
person who made the request, and then
tutorials.
puts it on the courseweb page. If that was requested, adds it to the podcast that was requested.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, because I think there are a lot of schools where there are people running around with little recorders.
Right.
Putting them down.
Yeah.
Well,
Somebody comes and picks it up.
it's doing audio, and
Yeah,
we do audio.
And then they have the audiovisual.
When you do a recording, you can say, you want me to capture audio?
Yeah, you can do that too, right,
Like a
exactly.
podcast, yes or
It's
no?
beneficial.
You want me to just do audio only,
Usage
not do video, yes or
along
no?
with the
And
demand
then,
that we have
so
to
we don't do anything
engage
like
students and
with
students
the other
looking
products in
for
terms of
somewhere
capturing
to go back
the
and
dedicated
get
output.
material because they're not paying attention to classes for some reason.
I think students expect that. At least they already recorded
That's the reason why
it. In fact, that was something the students said, was that they want to have
Because
a
one is
greater
universal
control
technology across
what they're
all
able to,
technologies,
sort of
right?
get
Which is that
from
if
their
you're someone who shows a
their
video,
class
if
experience.
you're someone who
They're
uses
trying to make a big
documents,
deal about it.
if you're somebody who uses this, I want
It's
our
their,
solution.
it's their content because they pay the tuition.
And
But
so
it's really,
just-
I think the fact that you
your
have to
power.
try.
Most of our users are not. So what do I get if I do that? What if someone is
No, you know what it really was that.
It's like capture on video,
earlier,
it's small
years
use
ago,
case.
people said,
So what we
well,
want to
go
do
ahead.
is
And just do a VHS tape, right? And so, we would have stacks of
that we're going
VHS.
to start rolling out.
When I
Instead,
was
we're capturing
at
what
some
the
point,
user
it became
might,
like-
the user might push blank, there's a pressure on it, not buy
5
audio.
feet tall, to the VHS tape. And so,
We're still
it
doing
just,
that.
I mean,
So what we're
it became
gonna
obvious to
say
me that
is
you have
we're
to do
just gonna
something
have,
else. So we started with,
you know,
the hand
and what's nice is the cameras, not only can you
But it
configure,
was really just,
it's a nice, it's nice.
I didn't ask for anybody's permission or anything really, I just, it's like, we have to do this, I'm doing it, whatever. And I think I was like, a few months
And then
ahead
you
of the,
can find each
curve a
one of those
little bit,
frame
so that it
rate,
wasn't like,
whatever,
well, how
fit
come we
rate,
can't
whatever you
right?
want.
Because I just sort of
So our
stayed.
goal is going to be, we're going to have a single camera in the back, and we're going to do wide shots, close up.
Who don't want to be recorded?
Then,
So it's like,
professor
there's
has
some
to
that do and some that don't, and then there's like all these content that's like, oh,
the professor's showing the video. You
I
can
don't
watch
want my,
it. The professor's doing, a document. You can see.
Yeah, right, no, I get that, yeah, and then nobody's really asked that kind of question. Which is actually pretty good. Right,
We do.
does a student have a right to say?
Yeah.
I don't
We have
wanna-
some
Yeah.
processes.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
not me, you know.
So I think we.
Right now, it's
I think we should
it's
start
MPEG 4.
thinking about
But we're going to
Yeah,
switch
no, I think
Once you
right,
get into it.
that'll bog this whole thing down.
try to squeeze
I
it.
mean, I think at the beginning of the year, in terms of
I mean, it's-
dean of students, explanation of what goes on.
I mean, a lot of it is that we don't-
What they should
I don't like to
say.
change things
Look,
that
we
are
do
recorded.
recordings.
So
You have to
when we
understand
first started doing this,
leave
we've
it
been
at
doing
that,
this
right?
long
And we
time.
actually do have some language. in our
H264
course,
and
like,
freeware
if
coders
you
or
want to
something.
set it, like something
It's
about,
good now. So we're going to move
that you can do something.
that. Right now, my goal is
Something
to
disciplinary action
is to
if
get
you do something.
the multiple screenshots going. Because
That's
once
what
we
we're
have that, And we also, we're
So
also
there's a
still
clear
constantly
learning,
researching
that,
software
you know,
that's just not there
I mean,
yet.
one of the great things about law students, right, is
We want to
they
do
want to,
searching
you
of
know,
our files.
pass the bar.
Yeah.
We need a good, and that's the problem.
There's a lot of leverage in
There's no
it.
good.
So, I mean, I've never really
But,
found law students ever really, I mean, that's why there's Twitter, they're just like,
But
I know,
there's-
but the
I just know
shop-
it's going to be a cloud service. I
how
think
stupid,
that,
you know.
regardless, they can do that. We can provide
Generally,
Yeah, but you need
I've never,
more
it
than that.
was like
You need
thousands of words. I've never heard of one example on YouTube.
closed
You know,
captioning.
This stuff is so boring anyway, right? I mean, you know,
Enter in a file, you
Yeah,
can actually
it's-
pay for translation.
there's nothing in it, like, you know, unless of course
What I
somebody
want to
really
be able
does
to do
sort
with that is
of,
where
you
you
know,
can search for
go off. And that day hasn't
You
happened
can
for
get
us,
6
where we
links back.
captured it in
Click on the link, there's a video.
But I can imagine, maybe, you know, some real
That's
sort of,
the
you know, flamboyant professor who's
Phenomenal.
trying to engage students in some way to try to push them by.
Wait.
And it doesn't translate well onto that audience, so it's really vital class. That could happen. It's decent. I don't know. We actually wasn't delete it, I guess.
Well, I
Once it's
I
out
wouldn't
there,
send the video, I would just send the audio.
Got it.
Files. I mean, even if they said like, oh.
But I think
this
we may be in better
attorney
shape
was
than last
conduct,
time.
we could do some segment. I mean, it doesn't, to me, it's not as powerful.
There's
It is.
Yeah,
Also,
because
we're not going to watch an hour-long class. And the other thing is you don't know the rate they're speaking, so you don't necessarily know, well, if there's 6,000 words, those words appear 3,000 words.
Yeah.
Halfway through the video. Are we halfway through the video?
Yeah, and, you know, I found that if you just hang them in the ceiling, and if your AV contractor knows
So I
what
think
you're
that
doing,
is still
generally
off.
that works fine.
What I hope
Yeah,
is
it really
to
does.
post
We have
tech
that number of classes
in the next month or two, put in the summer, is the
You know,
video
what's
system
nice
where
about
you
it
can
is
click
no one's gonna
buttons
mess
on
with it,
the
right?
bottom,
Turn it off and plug it in, whatever. They just,
Because
yeah,
you can
yeah, so, yeah, so, yeah,
And at least in quick
So there you
time,
get lots of network
multiple,
jacks.
in
Yeah.
one input file,
And they're all
multiple video tracks,
they plug in
multiple audio
the
tracks, and then you can build JavaScript controls to switch between different audio tracks as well as the different video tracks. So the goal will be we'll have one MP4 file or H264 file or whatever that has track.
Yeah, what they've done here is actually pretty good. They've actually taken it to
We'll
a
probably
level.
start off with just, because we don't really know where the pressure's going to go around, but, well, some of their
Yeah,
instruments,
so
we
that's,
know, like,
because they're getting the video too. So that's-
those are much better chance for us to at least be able to get that close.
Yes, thank you.
These have the problem, it's not, but we always know the screen. And so the idea being that we have a fixed screen recording, and then when people play, they'll have buttons, stage screen, whatever we decide to call it. And as you're watching it, you'll be able to click, and the video will switch, the audio track will stay the same. You can just be watching that, or you can do, and then you can do some cool things with FMM, which is what we use to convert. You can convert the streams to image files, and you can do image file comparison. So we could even do like a scrolling marquee of slides, or a scrolling marquee of video shots, like every 3 minutes, a video shot down below, that you click on it and jump the video to that point. So we've got a lot of different things, and where it'd be really cool is once we do that, we're going to be equal with Network 360 and all of those in this reverse issue, but we're actually going to be better because our audio is recording all the different sources. It'll do whatever the students are saying, and it'll respect the privacy controls and everything else.
It's always the same structure.
The students can see it in the classroom because it's projected on the screen.
I never realized that, because it is true.
Okay.
We don't want the X360 system recording what the professors are doing. We want what the students are looking at on the screen. Or screens. So this solution could support 3 screens. 4 screens. Whatever the extent is, I mean, the Access doesn't say how many limits it has in terms of defining configuration regions. It says it has, I know it says, I think the only number of references is 4 configurable regions. And camera comes with $1,500 we spent. That camera, standard depth, 1 student. So this camera is going to be like.
Wait, so Chili beats
so
Spain?
No, probably, my goal is to do this one camera now. If it works out well, in January, all the cameras will be replaced with that solution. And have these as our backups. Now, we won't do it in every classroom, it doesn't make sense. Like the seminar rooms and stuff like that, probably wouldn't do that, but in these large type of lecture rooms.
Yeah, they're out.
next
Wow.
page.
Crushed, they're crushed.
Oh, really? Create,
Tom, is it Cornell, right?
Yeah.
you guys have
We have our own,
scheduling system.
well, we have our own course management system.
Okay.
And so there's the public view of the course management system, and then there's management.
Probably.
When you go into the management
Get the content,
there's
you know,
different
on
tabs.
PDA.
One of the tabs is
You know, somebody that has a
management
style
view.
sheet that.
Go in there,
Separate style
lists
sheet.
all of the classes,
Yeah, there you go.
citations that
Yeah, there you go.
and it gives you some default options. You can just hit, literally, once you record all the classes, you're in that tab,
Pop
two
it on your
buttons.
Android or an iPhone.
Select
It's all
all,
huge buttons.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
and then they're recorded.
All right, gentlemen, nice job. Good job. Cool.
I want you to introduce myself.
Ryan, I'll see you.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go get on the bus.
Okay.
But I want to take a little time here. This is really impressive, everything you've done here. To fit in the video, which is, you know, hard to do.
Yeah, and, well, I hope that, I was just telling Jamie, we've got some new ideas that I think will really, I hope.
I heard you did talk about Access, you're gonna use like an Access,
Yeah, multiple streams
yeah.
from the camera. We're gonna go away from the you know how the echo streams, the video capture of whatever the computer's showing?
Yeah.
We're going to actually do a dedicated stream of whatever the projection screen is showing.
Right.
And so we think the benefits of that will be, one, if the professor has the screen blank, or is logging into the computer still,
Right.
or is doing something else,
Right.
that won't be recorded.
Are these Access cameras?
Yes.
They are Access cameras.
Yeah, this is an older model. That's
Right.
about 6, 7 years old.
Right.
We just got a new one in mail, actually, yesterday.
Right.
And that one does multiple streams, and so when you launch our player, you'll be able to select between which view you want to see, with one view
that's
being
nice.
of the screen,
Right.
and listening to the audio at the same time, or you could switch back to the stage, switch to the screen, and then you'll have a close-up. So if someone's using a document camera, using a VHS or DVD or anything like that,
Right.
you'll be able to select the view of just that content.
Is that part of an Access, you know,
Well, the Access camera, the new,
interface? Is-
right, no. The new Access cameras support multiple configurable user streams.
Right.
So what we're going to do is, since our cameras are fixed mounted,
Right.
we're going to define primary stream stage, secondary stream, this. Our recording software, we're going to modify to simultaneously record both streams,
Right.
store them into one MPEG-4 container file.
Okay.
And then in our player app, we're going to have JavaScript that will let you switch between the video tracks.
Right. No, that's great. That's great. That's fabulous. Yeah, you know.
But your problem, which is funny because I had left about that, which was space, is our problem.
Right.
We record we literally pick up over a terabyte of video a semester.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I believe it. Yeah. You know, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that. Well, I just ordered 18 terabytes.
You did, yeah, that's real money. That's real money.
$1,000,
Yeah.
a Dell Enterprise box.
How did you get that for 15 grand?
Yeah, that sounds like it would cost more, yeah.
Probably nothing.
All right, thanks, Tom.
That's
cheap.
Nice job.
I mean, you could build your own box and throw a 1 terabyte drive in cheaper. This is the.
Is it an actual SAN or is it just like a?
No, it's a SaaS box.
Like a drive.
But it includes the controller and everything. And it's only, you know, it's 24 slots, and I'm filling 18 to start.
Is it like an MD1000 or something?
1,200.
The new model. Okay.
Yeah, but the MD1000 has more slots. I think it has like 16 slots or 15 slots.
Yeah.
Something for this one only is 12.
We use the 3000 highs for our virtualization stand.
I mean, I have an extra RAID right now, and I have a NetApp. The problem with NetApp is it's a fast 270. It's incredibly expensive. So, I got $60,000 for this. Just the NetApp I have now, and I have $60,000 buying the NetApp. And especially not for Phoenix. We have our NetApp is actually right now. And then we also snack a lot of it.